Hello and welcome to Filter Optional. I am Chico West.
And I'm Shannon West.
Oh, and Shannon is joining us. She was trying to multitask.
Shannon is joining us.
You were trying to multitask.
Hold on. No one would have known that because I was multitasking.
Yeah, but I knew that.
No one would have known that.
And she turned it off right when we started.
No, I can multitask.
Chico pulled back the curtain on you.
I did.
Yeah,
I pulled back the curtain.
no one would have ever known, but Chico can't multitask. So
I cannot multitask.
He's looking over at me like,
I started to get a little anxious.
How's this going to happen? How's this going to happen?
Yes, I started going, uh-oh, she's going to be looking down with your readers on.
No, I did not.
And you did not. You had your readers off, and we can't even see your readers.
I'm going to be able to roll with this text thread the entire podcast if I want.
I'm
not going to, but I could.
I think you probably could.
I could.
You know, you did. You can
do
a good job that way. You know, but once again, filter optional. I am the no filter.
I'm the filter.
Yes, and I need that filter in my life.
Yes.
We thank each of y'all for joining us. You know, this past week, we might have had, you know, Kevin went on vacation with his wife, our producer, and we showed Angie's deal twice.
It kind of got out of the bag before it was supposed to, and
my wife says I exaggerate, but I tell her, I'm like, every time I go out of town, everything goes to. Like, every time. I hate leaving.
That used to happen with Chico, truly.
It did.
Unbelievable.
When I had my sober living house, I mean, we'd try to go out of town. And
people would die, literally. I mean, it was terrible.
It was not good.
I don't mean to make light of it, but it was literally, the stuff would hit the fan.
But that's why today I am excited. You know why I'm excited?
Why are you excited?
I am so excited about this show, and this show in particular. We'd been planning this show for a while. You know, and this show is with, I mean, truly, she's like my hero. One of my buddies met her and called her a Jedi.
Yes.
You know, she is a Jedi. You know, truly.
For you Star Wars fans out there.
Yes. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Mary and have Mary join us and tell us, you know, who you are and what you're about.
Well, thank you, Chico. It's really nice to be with you guys. I always enjoy coming to Texas for a few days, even though it's hotter than Florida down here right now.
It is. It is so hot.
It is.
You know,
the concrete is melting. But
I'm a psychodramatist. Have been doing that for a number of years, and I used to run a treatment center years ago and got intrigued by trying to understand how people heal. And I found that psychodrama is an incredible method of healing. It doesn't matter if there's addictions or not. It helps people heal from any kind of emotional, mental issues, because it is putting them in action. And the body always knows. The body holds things. And psychodrama allows the body to interact and you to come up with solutions.
For sure. And so you and I met years ago. I was up at On Site. You were leading my group of other men in the industry. And man, you really got me inspired to go, how do we do psychodrama at Casa Colina with the men there? But the thing is, I've done a lot of work with you, and we talk about doing work, you know, and when people that aren't familiar with treatment or aren't familiar with psychodrama, and you talk about, hey, getting in and doing your work, you know, do you have a good explanation of what doing your work means? Does that make sense?
Well, it does to me. It doesn't to a lot of people. But, you know, we don't have to be mentally ill to struggle with things like depression, anxiety, lack of forgiveness, grief and loss. Many people, life continues to hand all of us difficult situations. And either you get to deal with them honestly and forthright, stepping into it and trying to work out that process, or a lot of people just say, I'm not dealing. I'm just going to push it down, go on like it didn't happen. And what we know is that eventually will bring you to a breakdown. I tell people, I love this quote. We either grieve and do our grieving, or our organs will.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yes.
You know,
so that can be a mental type of breakdown, you know, with the brain and things like that. But for me, with my struggles with stress, anxiety, and codependency, really stress and anxiety, I think stemming from codependency probably presented itself finally physically for
Well,
me.
Shannon, codependency often brings more medical complications than a lot of the other addictive processes.
Well, that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
So, and and it took being hospitalized to look out the window one day before Christmas Eve, so a couple days before Christmas, look out the window in a hospital room and say, when I leave here, something has to change, or physically they're going to have to like remove some of my organs. I mean, literally, it was,
Right.
I was all of a sudden in dire straits. All my organs were inflamed actually at the time. And, so it can, and it was a direct, I couldn't put it on anything else except for just things that I had not dealt with.
Well,
Well-
God gives us three things every day: our time, our energy, and our gifts and our talents. And codependency is where we give all that away. We
Oh,
give
yeah.
it to other people and we don't save any for ourselves.
Right.
Our time, our energy, and our gifts and talents.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's everything we have every day.
Yeah, and right there, I love that because in our family program, that's the first rule, and so Angie and I meet with the families, and our rule number one: be on time.
Right.
And we're talking to these families, and it's just us and the families, and how we frame it up, we go, be on time. Okay, that's simple. They look at us. I go, okay, but wait a minute. Was your time valued with your loved ones, when they were active in their addiction? Did you value your time? We had a mom who was taking her daughter to look for wedding dresses in New York City, and her son was relapsing in Florida. And she was so focused on her son in Florida while she was in New York City, so she didn't value her time.
Right.
And so it's like what
Well,
Shannon's
but
saying.
even beyond addiction, like for me, this is just a light bulb moment for me. Just right now, 7 minutes in, it's like that would be a great meditation for me to have every morning. How am I going to spend my time today?
Yes.
How am I going to use my energy? Because of my physical setbacks, energy is sometimes hard for me day to day. So if I could meditate on how I'm going to spend my time, how I'm going to spend my energy, and how I'm going to use my gifts and talents, I think that's a great morning meditation for anybody.
Oh, I agree with that, because so often we allow people in our lives to steal those precious commodities that we can't get back.
Right.
Tomorrow's gone.
Yes.
There's nothing we can do about it. The time, the energy, it's gone.
Yeah.
I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I can remember when I walked through breast cancer, I never realized energy was so valuable till you didn't have it.
Right. My mom is too.
Yeah.
And I
So-
watched her go through those times in bed where she just couldn't get up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the thing is, I love you, Mary. You know that. What I love though is you really opened my eyes by the work that I've done at On Site. You've been that person that has encouraged me and spurred me on. And so when we talk about it, is you hear the word psychodrama, I think of psycho. What does that really mean? The old movie from the 60s. No, but psychodrama. So can you explain that? Because, man, you are, in my opinion, you're the best.
Well, thanks, Chico. I really appreciate that. And I honor and respect you as a treatment provider in this field, and loving having the opportunity to work with you. I tell people, I had a couple in my office not too long ago, and they saw my certificate on the wall as a psychodramatist, and the husband said, "What is psychodrama?" And she says, "I know." She said, "I'm the psycho and you're the drama." And in that case, it was kind of true. But
I'm not sure how that would pan out here.
psychodrama means the psychic or the drama of the soul, and that's the emotions, all the things that get stored up in us, family memories, our family of origin, the things that happened or didn't happen, conflicts that we have daily life. It doesn't matter who you are. We all have conflicts at times. And psychodrama is a way to put whatever is happening into action. Instead of talking about it, I always use the word show me. So if you were having a conflict with your son, instead of you talking about your son, I'd say, well, let's put your son in the chair. What do you want to say to him? And then I would have you role reverse and get in the role of your son. What does your son want to say to his dad?
Right.
And what it does is it brings you very quickly to the heart issues. So you really can escape and run away from the emotions, because linear therapy, left brain therapy, is just speaking from the mind. And we don't have a whole lot of emotions in that. But when you move to the right brain, you're now doing what we call experiential therapy. You're putting it into action.
Right.
So maybe in a way, I mean, I've never been trained in psychodrama. I've participated as doing my own work. I've watched you work, but you know, I've been a therapist for a long time. Maybe I have a little psychodrama in me, because lots of times I'll be sitting in session with individual clients and I get up and I start moving around and using my hands,
Yeah,
and
that's just
I don't,
you.
maybe it's just my ADD, but I try to, you know, illustrate something different when I see people getting stuck. Is that kind of?
Yes, it makes the covert overt. For instance, I would say, show me how close you are to your family by standing as close as you emotionally feel. That helps a family see that, yeah, I'd say I love them all the same, but if family's struggling with issues among the siblings, you might have one child real close to you and you said, this is the child of my heart. There's one over there that I've moved across the room that I struggle with. And psychodrama will just show you that immediately. And then you get to engage them. And what is the struggle about for you? Because this is your perception, not that of the child.
Okay, so here's the deal. You know me, I love Jesus and stuff like that. As you're talking, I'm going, I'm thinking of the woman caught in adultery. Was Jesus kind of that psychodramist when he got down on his knee and started drawing in the sand right there? I mean, he used a prop. He used what was right there to really illustrate the heart of those men that wanted to stone her.
I've often thought about that and wondered, I wonder what he wrote on the ground.
Yes.
But it did have a profound effect. And of course, in action, when we are moving, we really get to our own emotional heart. And that is something that people shield themselves from. Because people say, they're so painful, I just don't want to go in there. I don't want to talk about the death of my son. Or I don't want to talk about the loss of my husband.
Right.
Or I don't want to talk about the divorce. But you need to start allowing yourself to heal from the wounds that come every day in our world. I mean, even with the shootings and all the things that we see in the news every week, those people will benefit from experiential therapy where they get to express their anger about what happened and not store all those emotions.
Well, and we get a lot of mixed messages, you know, growing up, you know, wherever we're from, it's like, it's not all right to cry. Or like right here, I have this box of Kleenex. Lots of times someone starts to cry and you want to give them the Kleenex, you know, to take away, you know, it's like, I like the word Kleenex, clean up, you know, it's like all of a sudden it's like, I love it, you know, where it's like, no, it's all right to let those emotions out, to get in touch with that heart part right there.
Well, there's different toxicity or different chemical makeup from tears of joy versus tears of sadness and grief. And we need to share those. But again, our society hasn't allowed people to be comfortable because a lot of people feel shame if they show emotions. Or they'll say, I went to my dad's funeral or my mom's funeral and I never cried.
Right.
Like that's some sort of hallmark that you didn't cry.
Well, and Mary, let me ask you this question. You know, you've worked with thousands of people, men and women, you know, and there's kind of in this society that men don't show their emotions, but I find that women also don't show their true emotions. Now they might be more verbal. They might, get louder and stuff like that, or maybe even cry, but really not get in touch with those emotions as
Well,
much.
when Shannon mentioned codependency earlier, codependency is a medicator that helps people not feel.
Yes.
And they don't realize that they're using that to keep
Right.
their own emotions regulated. Because I don't want to tell you how angry I am about what I feel right now. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm going to take care of everybody and I'll be fine.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that. So I think my dad is a great example of someone that had a lot of childhood trauma, lost his dad to suicide, and then went to live with an uncle while my grandmother got sorted out. I mean, obviously,
Well,
it was traumatic for her.
they called it a nervous breakdown.
Well, yeah.
She was kind of in a comatose state, combing her hair.
But anyway, so he went through that he was a 10-year-old boy. So he went through that, and then, but he made a lot of promises to himself to deal with that pain. Promises that he would never move his family because he was moved around a lot, and we never moved. My parents tore their house down that I grew up in when I was a junior in high school and rebuilt it, and they still live on the same piece of property. He just made a lot of promises to himself that he would always be there for his children. He was at every game. He's now at every. He's the biggest cheerleader. He's the most wonderful man. And he has said before, because Chico's a therapist, and once we got married and they would start to talk about things, my dad was like, I know that it will be too painful to go there, so I'm just never going to go there. And he has kind of put his foot down. He's like, and he's 77 now, and he's like, I am never going to go there, because he has taught himself the ways for pain management. I mean, pain management can be physical pain, but it can be emotional pain, and you
Right.
figure out how to manage that pain. And he has figured that out, but I don't think he understands how much less pain he would. It's like you were talking about with the cancer treatment. You don't know what having energy is like until you have it
don't have
again.
it, right.
Yeah, until you don't have it, and then you maybe have it again, and you're like, oh gosh, I really.
Well, that
Anyway.
reminds me, a gentleman that came to on-site last week, I think he was 73, and when he first got there, he said, this is crazy stuff in here. Watching people talk to people that they knew they
Chairs.
had some unfinished business with.
Yeah.
But by the third day, he said, oh my goodness, I can't believe. He said, I feel like I've been unlocked.
Totally.
And he was so excited that when he was leaving, he says, I am sending my 2 daughters here because this has changed my life. He's 73 years old.
Yeah, I would love to see my dad talk to a chair and yell at his dad for taking his own life. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
because that would be normal.
Right.
Yes, it'd
Yes.
be healthy.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
It would be healthy. And see, and so the deal is, Mary, you come out to CASA, you do this at on-site, and our deal is when it comes to addiction, we see a lot of addiction. I like when you talk about the pain box. Can you describe that? Because you talk about there's addiction, there's codependency. What are those things?
Well, I designed a little treatment when I was running a treatment center many years ago, and I watched people going through the healing process and watch what they were trying to do to heal themselves. And what I realized is that people beat themselves up emotionally, or that's called introjection, turning anger inward, or they either have projection where they beat everybody else up. If you'd have been a better dad, a better mom, this wouldn't have happened
Better
to me.
employee, better anything.
It's like their anger just gets turned on the world.
And they vomit it on everybody.
Because there are 2 emotions that every human being struggles with. I don't care, socioeconomic, it doesn't matter. One of those is inadequacy, and the other one is abandonment. Please don't leave me, and tell me I'm okay. Tell me I'm good enough. And I tell people I'm almost 75 years old, and one day recently I was sitting in my office and I thought, they're going to come in here and arrest me today because I don't know what I'm doing. We all feel that way
Yeah.
at times. So when people get angry at themselves or angry at others, or they go into codependency, or they use medicators like drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, work, technology, and they go into treatment, and many of them leap over into this recovery, and they say, okay, I've been to treatment now, I've done my work, when they really haven't. The work means you step into the pain box before you go into recovery. And the pain box is literally, what have I shut off inside of me that needs to be talked about? Many times I've watched people in my group say, oh, you know, I've never shared the fact that I was abused as a child, or I've never let anybody know that Uncle Harry, what he did to us as a child, because my mom wouldn't believe me, so I wouldn't tell her. Or sometimes they tell their mothers, and they'll say, oh, Uncle Harry would never do that to you. You're just imagining that. So people carry all this hurt inside, and that literally destroys the emotions over time, because they become angry, they become isolated, they become resentful, they carry unforgiveness, and the weight of that destroys them as a person. And then they wonder, why can't I connect with my spouse? Why can't I connect with my children? Why can't I have this joy that people talk about? Because they're so loaded down with all the misery.
Well, and it might not even be big stuff like abuse,
No,
like
it
sexual
doesn't have to
abuse
be
or
big.
anything like that. It's like you see people get stuck, like that 13-year-old kid, you know,
Right.
that didn't grow up, that needed to perform and be the perfect kid,
Right.
and all this stuff, and they bring that into their marriage, they bring that into their
Yes.
job, you know. And so, like today, I loved it. You know, Shannon and I picked you up, and you were on the phone. And I don't know who you were talking to, but I did hear you say a couple times, no, you know, work within your adult self. I love that, because a lot of us will respond out of that 13-year-old or that 6-year-old,
Yes.
you know. And so going into that adult self, but we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, we do that by walking into the pain. Is that correct?
Yes, and we have to identify that there is a part of us that was wounded in some way. Most all of us have a part of us that was wounded.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to be able to identify that piece and love it, protect it, work with it, and be able to feel and to know that we can live daily in our adult and make the best decisions we can, because if you don't heal those wounded parts of you, they will take over your life because of their need. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they just want people to approve of them. So a lot of times when you watch people acting out in life, I see this little kid inside of them that says, I want what I want when I want it, and I'm going to do what I want to do regardless of what you say. And I've watched couples go through divorces, I've watched affairs, I've watched so many things happen because people haven't healed that internal pain inside of them.
Yeah.
Well,
And
can I throw in
yeah.
a personal application to that?
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
you and Beck. Can I?
Yeah,
Can
definitely.
I mean, I don't want to.
Out me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't, but I'm going to.
Go for it.
No, but it's just a good example. So, Beck is 15, and I've said this before, and Chico and I have talked about this on our podcast. We don't ever want to out our children. That is not our, you know,
Right.
we don't want to out our children. But so 2 years ago, Beck was 13 though, and struggled like every seventh grader does, I think. And I think that if you are in seventh grade and you haven't struggled, that you're lying to yourself. Because I'd like to meet the seventh grader that didn't struggle
Right,
at some point
absolutely.
at 13, you know, 12,
Because
13.
that's when they're forming the identity.
Yeah, and so
Exactly.
boys, they're
So-
doing that, and then girls, we call it. They make
Okay,
a
so
movie
wait.
out of 'em, Mean Girls.
Well, right. So Beck was struggling, and he and Chico were especially struggling with their relationship, because Chico would try to get in there and have a relationship and a connection with him, but they just weren't making a connection. And Chico finally got to a point to where he couldn't even figure it out. I mean, he's a trained therapist, you know, master's level clinician or whatever, and he finally came to me and he goes, I'm out. I want you to try to figure out how to deal with all this stuff with school and education and studying and all this stuff, and try to deal with Beck, because I can't have a relationship with him. He is not responding to me. And then it was literally shortly after, because this was like in January when like the stuff was hitting the fan, kind of with him emotionally, and
Or him being me. I had other stuff that was
well, and
happening.
then Chico
and
went
it was,
to onsite.
It was
Chico
coming
went to
out
onsite.
sideways.
Chico went to onsite in March, right? March. And then came back. So this is 2 years ago in March, and he came back and he said, "Oh no, you called me, I think, during the time."
Yes.
And you said, "Oh my gosh, my 13-year-old boy is..."
Fighting with my literal 13-year-old boy.
Yes. And he was like, and I have just realized this, that...
So
and
that's
so
the
he
work.
Came, I mean, that's the
work
work. He
that
came
we're
home,
talking about.
but we
Yes.
can pass it on to our children without even realizing
Yes.
it. And so, and here I haven't gone to onsite.
I've been wanting her to go.
I know, and I've
for a long
asked to go,
time.
and then and then of course it's so funny because I used to say, well, we have 2 kids, and you work full time. I can't leave for 5 days, and he's like, you're right, you can't leave for 5 days. And then we got to a point to where I was like, okay, maybe I can leave now, and then he's like, well, and then Travis has surgery, and I got to go to Austin and take, it just, we've got to figure it out. We'll figure it out. I am not resisting. I'm just putting that out there. I'm not resisting.
And sometimes you got to plant a seed. It takes a while for it to grow.
Well, and sometimes, oh, Chico, don't act like you've been planting this seed. Okay, but I'm happy to do my own work or whatever, but you can pass it on to your kids, and especially since our kids are the same gender as you are, then
Oh, for sure. And
I get a little bit of a break.
But I remember that phone call. I was doing work with you and my group up there, and I called Shannon that night, and I go, man, my 13-year-old is fighting against our literal 13-year-old. It's like, and so that's where psychodrama comes in, and you're getting ready to do a couple days with.
And
the
I want to
men
say,
at
I just want to
Casa.
top this off before we move
Yeah.
on, that Beck is doing so well right now. I have to brag on my child for just a hot second, since I kind of threw him under the bus. As a 15-year-old young man, he is doing so well, making great choices, making great decisions, and he knows how to feel his feelings because we walked through all of that. You came back and we walked through all of it, and he now can identify his feelings. He will come to me and say,
And you know what,
I'm
Shannon,
feeling
that
this
is
way.
a gift that will work for him the rest of his life. Because
Right.
when he gets married, that's what your spouse really wants. Can we connect emotionally?
right.
Can we have emotional intimacy? And that's what the work brings, is emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in the deal is he truly is. I love that kid, and it's not that. I was talking to someone from Midland about his 13-year-old son. I go, quit responding. I literally said this today. Quit responding to him as your 13-year-old. I did that, and it doesn't work. I go, but that's what's going on with you. And it was my buddy Paul in Midland. I told him the same thing. And the deal is when we do that work, we have these traumas in our life that keep us stuck. And so I like how you said we really can't experience recovery if we don't deal with that stuff. If we
Yes.
don't deal with the traumas, the wounds in our life,
Yes.
and really walk through it.
And I do believe that most addicts have trauma. The trauma occurred long before the addictions.
Oh, for sure.
Sure. Right.
Yeah, and so and then you see what happens is those medicators, those addicts, the medicators, the drug of choice that
Right.
they go to, it really helps keep those traumas
Yes.
in bay because they don't know how to
Absolutely.
deal with it. They don't. I had a buddy that went up to onsite, and he's a big man, and he just goes, I was just bawling. He goes, and he's huge, and he goes, but it was the most freeing thing I've ever experienced. Is we're trying to create that safe space. That's what I love about you. You create that safe space, and you are kind of a Jedi. You told us work within our gifts, and your gift is you can help people You paint a picture well of getting people to get in touch with their heart.
Well, and the rewards will just overflow every area of your life when you connect with yourself and you learn to love and respect yourself. It changes your boundaries, it changes your relationships, and you go through life having a gift to say, I know who I am and I know what I'm feeling, and
Yeah.
I've done my work.
Yes.
Yes.
And that work, it's wild because all of a sudden it's like you actually, it's like you worked out. You know, you
Yeah.
physically, mentally, and emotionally
Yes.
worked out.
Yes.
And you're exhausted at night, but it's kind of a good exhaustion.
Yes.
It's like that freedom of exhaustion.
Yes.
So we get excited. You know, the staff at Casa are excited. Oh, Mary's coming. I mean, these guys. There's probably not going to be. Guys can have drama. You know, there's probably not going to be a lot of drama in the next couple of days. You know, they get excited about that stuff. You know, it's like I love getting the phone call from, you know, one of the men from New Jersey. He's back there. You know who I'm talking about. And the work that he did, you know, with his daughter and his daughter's death. He goes, Mary was, you know, just really helped guide me to get in touch with that pain. And he's excited about recovery. You know, so this 55-year-old man who is an addict, you know, lost a daughter to addiction, is excited about recovery. And
Yes.
I'm not sure that can happen if you're just talking about just don't drink and go to meetings and work the steps. That's why we do the stuff we're
Well,
doing.
I shouldn't say I've been over 40 years in this field, and I know that unless you do the emotional work, you're never going to be emotionally free.
No, not at all.
And you're not going to have the quality of life you desperately want.
Yeah, I do like your little sayings. I want to get to a couple little sayings. Wait, my favorite saying: you can make a one-car funeral.
You could complicate a one-car funeral.
Yes, I love
That's in Arkansas. I'm from Arkansas. and,
yes.
Addicts can complicate and confuse and just wrap everything up so nobody understands it, but they do that as part of their process. And I tell them, you could complicate a one-car funeral.
Yeah.
I love that because I
Yeah.
see not even just addicts. I see people struggling with codependency.
Yeah.
You know, whatever the situation is, there's those people that you know they could complicate a one-car funeral.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's like those little
I think you could do
nuggets.
that, actually. I'm sitting here like, Chico could definitely complicate a one-car funeral.
I could complicate a one-car funeral for
I'm going to
sure.
use that. I got that.
You like that?
Yes.
But I was going to say something since Shannon, since we've been doing this podcast, I love her vulnerability and how she's just owning her codependency and she's doing work in that. No, I'm not.
I know. You.
But what I appreciated is literally in the last couple years, this month we'll be married 24 years. In the last couple years, you've had tears more than ever, but I don't think it's a bad thing. You've been able just to process and have your tears in a real healthy way when you're struggling. And I haven't gotten in there to fix them.
Yeah. Well, there's sometimes you're kind of coming in like, oh, don't cry because I can't make my point. You know.
Sometimes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why are you crying?
Yeah. But I've
Right, am I
allowed
right?
you've cried a bunch and
No,
and
sometimes
we
you're
didn't-
like, why the tears? Why? And I'm like,
but there's times I don't do that.
I know.
You know. And so
Yes.
I was giving
It's
you
a
a compliment.
process.
It is a process.
It's not a destiny, it's a journey.
It isn't a death. There's another one of
Yeah.
Mary's sayings.
It is a journey.
You know, but that's the cool thing is we get to these men, you're working with the men at Casa, these men get the opportunity to in a safe place to get in touch with those wounds, those traumas in their life.
And that I never get tired of watching adult men that will go in and allow, when they feel safe, to have someone escort them into that pain and start doing whatever they need to do, but to watch the transformation in them when they just look lighter, even after they've done the work. And the next day they talk about, man, I slept better, I feel lighter. especially when we work on forgiveness. That's a really big topic. And so many people, they don't forgive themselves. They are still angry about what they did, what they should have done, could have done, if onlys. And when they let that go, oh my God, the transformation is just, it's almost miraculous.
Yeah, it's like that 73-year-old man that you said at onsite is like, I think of some of these men that, you know, are in their 50s and stuff that, you know, don't forgive themselves for something that happened, you know, 40 plus years ago.
Right.
Now on the outside, they're kind of functioning, you know, not, you know, somewhat, even the men that come to CASA in their 50s, they function for a long time.
Right.
You know, they're married, some of them may be divorced, but they've been functioning, they've held down jobs, they've done that. Now it's just progressed, but they've held these things way before their addiction.
Yes.
You know, they've held that trauma, that pain that they've never addressed.
Right.
And so it's creating, you work within your gifts because you create that space that's safe to help people walk into that.
Well, we're not going to walk into it till we feel like, because most issues happened in fear. So you have to make sure the fear goes away. And that's where the safety, when people feel safe and they trust you and they feel like, okay, if you can walk me through this and I don't have to do it alone, I can go there.
Yeah, exactly. And so, man, I thank you so much. I love you. I love what you said to me a year and a half ago. We were talking about how I needed to get away from CASA, trust my staff, you know, get out there and share about that. That's what we're doing with this thing. You know, but you spoke truth to me that I could hear, and I appreciate that.
Well,
Thank
I love you too, Chico. You're a hot mess.
I know, right? Yay! Yay!
That
There's
is
my
for sure.
validation. always appreciate extra validation.
Yes, I am a hot mess, and I embrace that mess.
But he has a
Yes.
loving heart that
Absolutely.
everybody trusts.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you very much. And until next time, we are filter optional.